Hola chicos, gracias por sintonizar Bitcorner Podcast, el primer podcast salvadoreño de Bitcoin donde entrevisto a líderes, pensadores, economistas, políticos, educadores en Bitcoin y mucho más. Recuerda que este podcast es un puente entre todas estas líderes, pensadores y que están trabajando en Bitcoin y nuestra comunidad hispanohablante. Así que si quieres apoyar el show, por favor no olvides suscribirte al canal. Y si te gusta este tipo de contenido, dale el botón de like para que puedas compartirlo y llegue a muchas más personas. Y además no olvides darle a la campanita para que no te pierdas ningún episodio y te llegue la notificación de un nuevo episodio. Además, recuerda que este podcast no te ofrece ningún tipo de consejo financiero, es nada más para educación y entretenimiento, así que antes de realizar cualquier inversión, no olvides hacer tu propia investigación y sé consciente de tu tolerancia al riesgo. ¿Ok? Es hora de hablar del primer partner del podcast, que es donde yo protejo mis bitcoins, Blockstream. Cuando dejas tus activos digitales en un exchange o en custodia de alguien más, te expones a riesgos de terceros no deseados. A diferencia del sistema bancario tradicional, Bitcoin te permite tomar el control total de tus fondos utilizando tus propias claves privadas. Esto te permite ser soberano y esencialmente tu propio banco. Al tomar el control de tus Bitcoin, puedes evitar riesgos innecesarios de terceros. Almacenar tus Bitcoin en custodia de terceros como los exchanges puede exponerte a ataques de actores malintencionados, gobiernos o estafadores que lo único que quieren es apoderarse de tu dinero. El proceso de autocustodia puede parecer abrumador al principio, pero afortunadamente Blockstream Jade Wallet hace que sea súper fácil custodiar tus activos. Las billeteras de hardware son dispositivos que almacenan de forma segura las claves privadas de tus bitcoins y activos de Liquid sin conexión a Internet. Las billeteras de hardware aumentan la seguridad de tu billetera porque tus claves privadas se almacenan en un dispositivo especializado que no está siempre conectado al Internet. Como te he dicho antes, mantener tus claves almacenadas en un dispositivo en línea puede exponerte a factores adicionales de ataque, por lo que se recomienda usar una billetera de hardware al almacenar grandes cantidades de Bitcoin durante largos periodos de tiempo. Jade es una billetera de hardware no custodial para Bitcoins y Liquid que ofrece opciones de firma simple y firmas múltiples. Yo personalmente lo utilizo para almacenar mis Bitcoins, ya que me siento mucho más seguro manteniendo mis Bitcoins en una billetera fría que en una almacenada, por ejemplo, en mi teléfono. Si estás pensando en adquirir uno para ti, no olvides utilizar el código de descuento de nuestro show, BitCorner Podcast. De esta forma estarás apoyando directamente el show y además obtendrás un 10% de descuento para la compra de tu billetera fría. ¿Ok? Hora del show.
You can create money out of thin air. There's just too much temptation for governments to not do that. They're eventually going to do it. And usually they do it for bad things, meaning they're going to go have more wars. And they're going to use it in ways that takes money from everyday people and centers it more in the hands of the very well connected, the rich. And I think Bitcoin solves for that. I think Bitcoin really helps solve the war problem, especially the ongoing wars that the U.S. has been in over the last couple few decades of where being in Afghanistan for forever and Iraq and those kinds of things. There's no appetite from the public to be going off and bombing these other countries and being involved with our military. And if you can't fund it, then it really restricts it, and that's what I think Bitcoin solves for. So that's number one. I think number two is that it really solves for helping people think long term versus short term.
Hello, guys. Welcome once again to Bitcoiner, the podcast for Bitcoiners from a Salvadorian to the world. Today, we have the great pleasure to talk with Daniel Harmon. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your time and welcome, Daniel.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on, Juan.
Thank you very much. All right. So, it's really curious. A couple weeks ago, I have seen the show. It's getting really popular between Bitcoiners, and I was curious because I was seeing some shorts, especially. Well, I'm going to tell you how I discovered the show, because I saw a retweet from several Bitcoiners, and one of them was Daniel Prince, and also I think Skies, or I don't know, but it was a lot of them. I was really curious, so I was thinking about, I gonna do my research, and then I saw that the content is really great. So, but we will talk about the show. But I like to start the podcast, so in order that our audience get to know our guest. So maybe if we can start by, if you can share with us a little bit about your background and about your professional career. What are you from? And we will continue on that.
Yeah, you bet. So my background and my career prior to Tuttle Twins was in advertising. So I'm a
Hmm.
co-founder of an ad agency called Harmon Brothers that's known for big viral hits like Squatty Potty and Poo-Pourri and Purple Mattress and chapbooks and Kodiak cakes and Lumi deodorant and Skull Shaver and these different kinds of ad campaigns that have blown up and driven millions of views and millions of dollars in sales. And once I had been doing that long enough, I wanted to kind of tell stories of my own, not just do it for clients. I love doing it for clients, but I wanted to kind of um, I wanted to do I wanted to do a feature film initially, but um, I had a friend named Connor Boyack that wrote a series of books called the Tuttle Twins that taught kids about principles of freedom and economics. And I bought the first book when it was released and got really excited about it because I had always wanted a resource like that when I was a kid to help me better understand rights to life, liberty, property, those types of things. And I bought all his books that he had afterwards. And once he'd had enough success with the book series where he was getting into like the tens of thousands of copies sold, he started throwing around the idea of turning it into a TV show. And my partner and we reached out to him and said, well, no, we want to make it into a TV show for you. We want to be the ones to do it. And Connor Boyack, the author of the series, he really respected and liked followed the work that we were doing at Harmon Brothers with the ads. And we had been following his work. And so we just kind of sat down together and worked out how we could turn this into a really fun show. And we ended up doing a partnership with him, and also our distribution partner is Angel Studios, that's known for the TV program The Chosen, which is about the life of Jesus Christ and told more from the perspective of the followers of Jesus, and it's been seen by over 100 million people around the world. And The Chosen became popular from crowdfunding, right? They were able to raise over $10 million to fund the first season of the show. And we decided we were going to use crowdfunding as well to get Tuttle Twins off the ground. So we went and crowdfunded and were able to raise over $3.7 million from over 8,000 people. And it was the #1 crowdfunded kid show in history at the time. And so from there, we kind of got on our feet, started making the show. And here now in season 2, we finally got to an episode about Bitcoin, and it's been very well received and spread around the Bitcoin community, and is really helping a lot of people understand Bitcoin in a way that they never have before. So that's really exciting to see.
Wow, that's so cool, the background. I mean, I love it. And okay, maybe you can share with the audience what exactly is Turtle Twins. I know you already explained a little bit, but what what is the story behind it? And I have another question, that is, season 1 and season 2 are related, or are there different episodes, or how does it work, the inspiration of the show?
Yeah, so it's based on the book series, like I said, that Connor Boyack wrote. And so it teaches about principles of economics and freedom. So things like rights to life, liberty, and property, um, individual liberty, entrepreneurship, the golden rule, being able to understand things like inflation is a big one of them that we touch on. And so that's what the show does. It teaches kids about those principles. And we have a grandma with a time traveling wheelchair, and she takes her grandkids, the Tuttle Twins, back in time to learn from famous figures in history. So people like Frederick Bastiat, like Milton Friedman, like Annie Turnbull Malone, Benjamin Franklin, James Madison, Harriet Tubman, all Rosa Parks, all these different incredible figures in history. And they dive in and learn these lessons and then come home and learn how to apply them in their own lives. And so it's a little bit of sort of science fiction and adventure and comedy mixed together. Some of our inspirations for the show have been shows like The Magic School Bus, that obviously has a lot of education with it, but mixed in with comedy and adventure adventure elements from shows like Phineas and Ferb, and The Simpsons. And I know a lot of our writers are inspired by Rick and Morty, and just a lot of Gravity Falls, a lot of shows like that,
Wow.
where
Those are
we've
really cool shows.
yeah, they're really fun shows. And we've kind of brought some of those elements together in a really sort of family friendly way, where we've intended it as a co-viewing experience where parents and kids can watch together, both enjoy it at the same time, and then have critical thinking conversations around the dinner table about things like inflation. Of like, oh, where does inflation actually come from? You know, is it all from corporate greed, or is it from inflating the money supply, like actually printing more money all over the place, right? When you inflate the money supply, you cause the prices to rise everywhere. So we talk about all those things inside the show. And season one kind of has a lot of those elements in it, and it's in episode 3 of season 2, where we get into Bitcoin and understanding what makes money hard versus what easy money is, and that when money is easy to make, society begins to break. And that's kind of the lesson that the kids take away from it. So I don't know if I answered your original question or not, but I said a few things.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, it's really fun, and you talk about inspiration, and I'm seeing your background, and I'm seeing that you're a fan of Star Wars and also ET and BB-8. So there are also inspirations, or you like them, or what is the inspiration, or why do you have them in the background? Because I love all those shows too, all those movies too.
Yes. So I'm a big fan of Legos, as you can see from behind me.
Oh,
These
so
are
are
all
Lego. Those are Legos.
these are Lego sets.
Oh,
And
that's so
there's
cool.
and well, that one right there, that's Wally. That's not ET. That's
Yeah.
Wally
Oh,
from
yes, true.
Pixar.
Sorry. It's Wally.
It's
Sorry.
okay. I mean, ET is great too. But
Yeah.
yeah, I very much fell in love with Star Wars when I watched as a kid, and that has also been a bit of an inspiration for the show, particularly when I've learned how George Lucas kind of came up with Star Wars, that
Mhm.
he was drawing inspiration from things like the samurai films and the Western films that he'd watched, and the from comic books. He was kind of pulling inspiration from all over the place to make the Star Wars story, and that's a little bit of what we've done with Tuttle Twins as well, like I mentioned.
Mhm.
And and yeah, I just think I'm basically making a show that I would have wanted to have as a kid, and that I want for my kids. I have 7 kids, and I'm always running our scripts by them and making sure that the jokes are working for them, that the story makes sense to them, and that the lesson is clear for them. and they're kind of my little built-in in the house focus group to kind of test our content and make sure it's going to work for a broader audience. So they help me out a lot that way.
That's so cool. I was laughing. I was containing my laugh because you know that today actually I went with my nephew in the morning. There's an exhibition here in Barcelona that it's from Pixar. Actually, that they brought it from
Okay.
Boston. Yeah, or we already
Cool.
saw in the morning Wally,
Oh,
and also
great.
yeah, and also The Incredibles, and also what else? Monster. Well, all the movies that are from Pixar, you know,
Yeah.
and they show the
Yeah,
process
those are
how.
amazing.
Yeah, but the incredible stuff is that there's a museum here that is called Cosmo Caixa, and so the idea to bring those things is that you can see through math and science how they make all the process of the cinema, you know, since you make the
Yeah.
first drawing to the last steps that is the rendering. So it's really amazing, and how do you make the shapes of every form. For example, in Ratatouille, how
Excuse me.
no, don't worry. How they make all the forms. For example, a triangle, a couple triangles that make the cheese and everything. So it's really amazing, and it's really cool for kids to know all this stuff from different angles because they see it on the movies, but it's also important that they know how these things are built, right? So it was
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah, what
And
is amazing about animation is that essentially everything you see is by choice, right? Everything has to be created from scratch. And so when you see the environments and the backgrounds and all those little things like the texture on the cheese and stuff like you were talking about, all those things are choices that have to be made by artists. And so it all has to be created from nothing. And that's what's kind of amazing about animation is the level of control you have, as well as just how many people have to contribute to make something that just appears on your screen that way. Because when you film live action, which is what I used to do with the advertising, you know, sometimes you are shooting outdoors, and then you are kind of getting stuff sort of accidentally in the way that the performer is performing, or just like the weather or the trees or the different things that you don't have as much control over it. But what's really interesting about animation is every single one of those little things is a choice by an artist, and so it's kind of fun to see that come together.
and how much time does it take to produce an episode? Because I was
An
watching
episode.
the yeah, because I was watching one example of a scene from it was from Coco, and they were saying like it took from 50 hours to 80 hours to produce like one shot of a scene. And I was like, wow, that's a lot of power of rendering to produce it.
Yeah. Yeah, our rendering is not nearly that, because it's 2D animation and not 3D,
Yeah.
and it's much
Mhm.
it's much more simple and much more flat colors than what you
Mhm.
see in like a Pixar film. The rendering time is not nearly as crazy. Our animators deliver final rendered shots to us. We plug them into the edit, and then we do a final export of the film, and that's not that bad. But when they actually render those out, it's not nearly that much time. What I would say is from when we start writing an episode until we finish it and it's ready to go live on the Angel app, that's where you can watch it there for free, is that's 7 to 8 months,
Okay.
from very beginning to end, and we're
Wow.
always producing more than one episode at a time. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, we might have 5 or 6 episodes that are all either being written or that are being animated or that are being storyboarded or in different stages of production that can be all happening all at once.
All right, all right. And all right, you already mentioned that season two has this episode about Bitcoin, and I think most of Bitcoiner we already saw it, and it's amazing. But before talking about that, how was your rabbit hole journey? Let me know how do you discover Bitcoin?
I had an older brother that started talking to me about Bitcoin. He had been doing some research and found it on the internet. This was clear back in, I think, 2012 or 2013. And he started telling me about it, like this digital money. And I was just kind of like, what? A digital money? Like, can't you just, like, that doesn't sound very secure. That sounds stupid. Like, you can just copy and paste that. And then he started helping me understand the concept of the blockchain. And when I understood that like one computer, that all these different computers basically have to verify the math, right? They have to verify the transactions and kind of keep each other honest, and that there's a built-in incentive to do that. When I kind of had that aha moment of like, oh, this is completely, it's no one person can just kind of manipulate this, and all the computers in the network have to say that this is the truth right here. This is really the way that all the transactions have gone. And when I understood that, I was like, oh, that's cool. And I decided to buy some Bitcoin. And when I bought it for the first time, I think it was in 2013, it was at $110 per coin, for Bitcoin. And so I bought my first Bitcoin, and I think I might have bought like two Bitcoins or something like that. It wasn't very much. And then as soon as it jumped up to $135, I sold it because I was like, oh, I made like a, like 25% gain. I did that in like a month. This is amazing. And and then it quickly shot up over $2,000.
Oh my gosh.
And I did eventually buy back into Bitcoin, but never at that
Yeah.
price again.
Absolutely.
But that was when I first had been introduced to it. So I think I started buying back into Bitcoin when it was around like $800. And I bought some and accumulated a little bit. Even I think all the way down to $400. This might have been the lowest I got again, when it sort
Yeah.
of dipped back down. But I've kind of talked to my kids about it over the years and kind of helped explain it to them. And they've had moments when they put in some of their money to Bitcoin, like a little bit of their savings, a little bit of their spending money. They put in just little bits, nothing crazy. Like, oh, I want to put in this $12, Dad, that kind of a thing. And so my family has been exposed to it for a while. And then one of the executive producers is my brother, Jeffrey. He had kind of been suggesting we should do an episode on Bitcoin. And at first I was like, I don't think that's going to make sense to do that in season one. But now that we've built up enough confidence with our audience, and they understood what we were doing with the show and knew that we were really trying to help them understand these principles of freedom and economics, then I think we had enough trust to be able to approach a subject like Bitcoin, because not everybody loves Bitcoin, right? There's a lot of controversy around it. But we really wanted to help people understand that concept of hard money and how Bitcoin fits so well into that, how it really stops the power of governments to manipulate money, manipulate a currency to go and do a bunch of things that we, the people, don't want them to do, And so we decided to dive into Bitcoin and hopefully explain it in a way that they've never seen it before, where grandma and the twins go into the internet and learn about Bitcoin from Satoshi Nakamoto. And we have Satoshi, we always have his face covered up like this, right? Where we always kind of like Wilson from Home Improvement. If you remember Home Improvement back in the day, there was that character that always kind of covered his face with the fence. You could never really fully see him. We kind of do that with Satoshi Nakamoto, so you don't really know who he is. We kind of keep his anonymity. And then he explains to them how the blockchain works, how Bitcoin does fall into the category of hard money, like gold does, and how when you adopt Bitcoin, it brings a lot more stability over time. Like, obviously, there's a tremendous amount of volatility in Bitcoin compared to other things. But when you look at it, for those of us that have been following Bitcoin for a long time, the volatility is actually relatively low compared to what it was, right? In the early
Yeah.
days, it was crazy, but it's slowly becoming much more predictable. And it's shown itself to do a really good job of holding its value long term. I mean, if you look at, you know, the average year over year growth of Bitcoin, it's amazing. And it really probably says less about how much Bitcoin is so it's less about how Bitcoin is just skyrocketing in value. It's more about how fiat currencies are getting destroyed, right, by governments. That's really more of what it's saying.
Absolutely. I love the approach on the show. And so one thing that I want to also ask you is that, do you remember this aha moment, but not about Bitcoin, but when you realize that because you know there is Bitcoin and there is crypto, so the point that you differentiate between one another and you say, all right, Bitcoin is the best solution that we have already for the problems of fiat money, and the cryptocurrency, well, is at the end are the same problems, right, of fiat. Do you remember that moment, or it was more a process, or how was it?
Yeah, when we were writing the episode, we had a lot of debates of whether or not we talked about crypto in general or whether we focused in on Bitcoin. And ultimately, this is a show for kids. It has to be understandable for kids. And so we wanted to make it as simple as possible. And the most simple thing was to focus in on Bitcoin because it's the most tried and true. It's withstood the test of time the most. It has that 20 million coin limit set on it, where a lot of other cryptocurrencies don't. That really keeps it, makes it hard money. And it was more for simplicity and understanding than it was like we wanted to hard sell anybody on Bitcoin. We weren't trying to do that as much as we were trying to help them understand it. I mean, it's at the end of the day, it is an investment like anything else. You'd only want to put in money that you're willing to lose. In many cases, we say those kinds of things in the episode, and we're not trying to necessarily say Bitcoin is the only way forward or anything along those lines. But I do believe if it's not Bitcoin, it's going to be something very much like it that is going to long term change money as we know it, and for the better, very much for the better. I think it likely is to be Bitcoin, just because it's got the first mover advantage. It is very likely to, the network effect is very hard to overcome in that sense. There's so much support for it. There's so much a community around it. And then there's a lot of technology being built up around it to kind of support and help its shortcomings. And so that's encouraging to see regardless. So we just felt like that was the best way to teach it, the most simple way, rather than talking about all the different kinds of crypto and all the different concepts behind that.
Right. And one question, if imagine that you don't have the show, how do you think is the best approach to make kids to start understanding the concepts of not just Bitcoin, but as you mentioned, hard money, easy money, and how do you transmit the core of the message to the kids? Because you know they're kids, so that they don't know the complex of everything.
Yeah, I mean, I would always say just start with the show, because there was one guy that he said, you explained in 20 minutes what I couldn't explain to my wife in 7,000 hours. He said something along those lines. I think for kids, if you're going to talk to them about Bitcoin, one of the best ways to talk about it is in the sense of a bunch of connected computers that talk to each other. And when one computer says, you know, this is how it is, this is how this transaction happened, then all those other computers either say, yes, that's right, or they say, no, that's wrong, and then it's rejected. And I think just on that basic level, that's kind of how you understand Bitcoin is there's a bunch of computers talking together, and one might, someone might be on one computer trying to do something that's deceptive, that is not true. They're trying to steal money. But then there's all these other computers that help say, no, that's not the case. And that alone is going to protect Bitcoin. And I think them just understanding that alone was very helpful for my kids when I talked to them about it. I think even when they watch it, there's still going to be questions. We don't get into anything in the show about things like the happening that happens with Bitcoin. We don't get into the fact that the eventual end date of Bitcoin of like the year 20, I forget what it is, 20 something.
Yeah, the hash rate. You mean no, the
Yeah,
halving. Sorry, the halving.
the happening, yeah, we don't get into all those kinds of details just because I think they're more support for the main thing that when you have a bunch of computers that all have the same record, and if one computer is trying to do something bad, all the other computers can stop it. That alone kind of helps people understand how this is working, and that all the computers are essentially getting paid to do that, right? They're getting paid to help keep Bitcoin honest. Then I think they start to understand how that works, especially when you're saying there's only 21 million of these that are ever going to be created. And then think of how many dollars are out there, think of how many dollars are being printed. That starts to help them understand, oh, like for my kids, I would say to them, if you have an apple and I want to buy your apple from you, and I pull out $100 bill, are you going to want to sell me that apple? They'll be like, oh yeah, totally. And then I say, but what if that entire mountain, so we live next to a giant mountain, what if that entire mountain is made of $100 bills? What if that's just all $100 bills and anybody can get those $100 bills? Then are you going to want to sell it for that apple? And then they're like, oh, yeah, that won't be very valuable anymore. It's like just understanding that a little bit kind of helps them wrap their head around, well, once you just make money available just like that, like crazy, where just it's any amount of it that's available, then yeah, there's no value in it. They can start to understand that idea of supply and the kind of relationship between some supply and demand. And that it applies to money just the same as it does to apples, to bananas, to cars, to computers, to houses, to anything else.
That's so cool. I love how you explain it to kids. I think it's a really good example because yeah, you have to go to the basics in order to explain something really complex, right? And all right, I have another question for the show, but I'm really curious because when I contact to your team, they told me that you speak Spanish. So how does it come?
Sí.
And cómo es que hablas español? Cuenta un poco la historia.
Okay. Yo hice una misión por mi iglesia en el años 1099. Sorry. Hace mucho tiempo que no lo hablo, pero
no, no te preocupes, no te preocupes.
yo pasé 2 años en Perú haciendo servicio y proclamando el evangelio.
Okay.
Aprendí a hablar el castellano, se dice ahí, en
Sí.
Perú. Y pasé como 1 año en Lima y 6 meses en Ayacucho, Perú, y 6 meses en Chincha. Y ya, un gente increíble, muy un tiempo para mí especialmente impresionante porque aprendí a servir mucho más. Me encantó la comida también.
¿Tienes un plato
Ah,
favorito? Porque una cosa,
de Perú, sí, durante mi misión, había una regla en nuestra iglesia, una misión es un área geográfica.
ok,
Um, Porque como yo estaba sirviendo en Lima, en diferentes partes así, y hay un presidente de misión, como hay como 200 o 300 misioneros en un área particular, y el presidente de mi misión tenía una regla de no comer el pez no cocinado.
ah, sí,
Como en
crudo.
Perú, el plato típico es el ceviche,
Ujú.
pero yo no podía comerlo porque había misioneros que lo habían comido
Y
y
se enfermaron.
se enfermaron. Y había dos misioneros que se murieron de un mal plato que habían comido, como
No,
hace 2 años antes que viniera yo. Y
wow.
entonces, nunca probé, nunca
Pero sí probé.
probé.
Sí
Ya,
probé.
nunca probé el ceviche en Perú, pero en Chincha hacen un plato que se llama carapulcra
Ajá.
con sopa seca.
Ujú.
Y era mi plato favorito. Pero no lo hacen en los restaurantes peruanos aquí, no lo hacen, pero sí sirven el ceviche y yo ya he probado el ceviche aquí y me encanta. Es mi plato favorito de Perú, aparte de la carapucra con sopa seca que hacen casi solamente en Chincha de Perú. Pero ya, y como yo pasé más o menos 8 o 10 meses de mucho dolor, porque yo no, ¿cómo se llama? No escucho bien o no oigo.
¿Entendías?
No,
Ujú.
sí, no entiendo el idioma muy bien. Como
Ujú.
yo tengo una mente cuando no entiendo lo que una persona está diciendo, mi
Sí.
mente
Ah,
se va por todos lados.
sí.
Mi mente está en los cielos. Sí. Sí, no estoy entendiendo lo que tú estás diciendo. Entonces,
Sí.
me duró, era muy difícil para mí aprender el idioma, pero eventualmente yo aprendí a hablar más o menos bien, pero
Sí.
ya hace más que 20 años que casi no hablo mucho español. Um, yo,
Wow.
yo fui con mi familia el año pasado a México a pasar una semana de servicio en un orfanatorio
Ujú.
con mi esposa y con mis hijos. Y
Mm.
yo hablé el español por una semana, pero no lo hablo mucho, pero...
No, pero está bien. ¿Y antes o sea, sabías algo de español? ¿Habías aprendido en la escuela? ¿O fue en Perú que aprendiste?
Mi
de-
mamá trató de enseñarme un poco de español cuando yo era joven. Yo sabía algunas palabras como el baño, la comida, casi
Sí.
nada. Pero cuando llegué al Perú, mm, hablan tan rápido. Bueno, los
Sí.
peruanos no hablan muy rápido. Los
Sí.
mexicanos sí hablan súper rápido. Y cantan su
Sí.
manera de hablar. En México es de cantar así.
Sí.
En Perú es casi, lo hablan muy claro y muy despacio en comparación con muchos otros países.
Sí.
Pero para mí estaban hablando muchísimo rápido y era muy difícil entender lo que estaban diciendo. Aunque yo sabía muchas palabras, no podía entender todavía.
Ok, sí. No, pero has aprendido súper bien. La audiencia te lo dirá, te dejará en comentarios que sí lo hablas súper bien, porque es así.
Gracias.
Sí, no, y lo que te quería contar era que un buen amigo mío, que de hecho es mi compañero de piso, de hecho vivo con una amiga de mi país y un amigo de Perú, entonces
Ujú.
eso, y él a veces cocina comida de su país y es muy bueno. Entonces, por eso te
Oh,
quería,
sí.
por eso fue la pregunta del platillo, porque es muy rico. Y de México
Ujú.
sí, tienes razón. Tengo familia también de México, que son de México, y sí, hablan totalmente diferente. Es lo que me gusta de Latinoamérica, que cada región tiene
Ujú.
su entonación, ¿no? De cómo hablar el español.
Y es lo mismo en los Estados Unidos, como la gente de Texas habla de una manera muy diferente que la gente de California o de Nueva York o de Florida. Todos tienen una diferente manera de hablar. En Utah también tienen acentos distintos y palabras diferentes que usan dependiente de la cultura y de las cosas que pasan allá, pero es casi lo mismo. Pero creo que hay aún más diferencia como la gente de Argentina y de España y de México. Creo que hay aún más diferencia en la manera de hablar en español entre los diferentes países cuando uno lo compara con las maneras de hablar de los diferentes estados de los Estados Unidos.
Ok, ok, sí. Bueno, antes de volver a las preguntas del show, una última cosa y es que ve a El Salvador. Te invito a que vayas a El Salvador.
Sí,
Ah,
me encantaría ir al Salvador porque es la ley en El Salvador que Bitcoin ya es dinero, ¿no?
sí, sí,
Ajá. Se
es-
reconoce como dinero.
sí.
Y
Entonces
creo
deberías,
que eso solo va a tener mucho poder de como ayudar a salir adelante el país, ¿no?
sí. De hecho, han pagado, bueno, gracias no solo Bitcoin, sino que todo lo que ha conllevado eso, más el trabajo del gobierno con la seguridad, más, bueno, la ayuda de Bitcoiners de todas partes del mundo, y bueno, pues, la educación. Eso ha ayudado muchísimo a que el país pueda salir de el camino. Todavía no ha salido de deuda, pero va el camino de salir de la deuda con el Fondo Monetario Internacional. Y sí, no, te invito para que
Entonces, lo opuesto de los Estados Unidos. Los Estados Unidos estamos metiéndonos mucho más en la deuda.
sí, pero sí, no, que deberías ir ahí para que vayas a Bitcoin Beach y bueno, a San Salvador, que es muy bonito, y vivas un poco la experiencia también como full Bitcoiner.
Me encantaría, sí. Algún día. Primero tengo que visitar a los que están haciendo la animación de mi show. Lo están haciendo en Colombia y tal vez
Oh,
yo
wow,
voy primero a Colombia y tomo un avión
eso es
a
genial.
Salvador también. Ya.
Colombia es muy bonito, sí, sí, sí. Okay, back to the show, and thank you for the effort to speak in English. It was really amazing, for real. No, you speak
Yes.
really well.
Yeah,
So
it's sometimes just more remembering the words and stuff now. I can speak it, but there's just a lot of words I haven't used in a long time. So it gets a little tough there. Anyway.
yeah, yeah, but I mean, it's normal.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the question that I was going to ask you before this is space, this is Spanish space was the okay. So we have talked a lot about the show, the episode, season one, season two, but zooming out and looking at the show, what is the main goal? What do you want to achieve with the Tuttle Twins?
Yeah. So our mission is to teach 100 million kids about the ideas of freedom. That is what we're pushing towards. We're starting in the United States. in English, and then we are going to the show is available now in Portuguese. One of Brazil is one of the biggest. Well, it is the biggest country aside from the United States that's watching the show, and then
Wow.
the rest of Latin America, yeah, Central and South America is also are their biggest markets, and so it's currently being dubbed in Spanish as well. So we
Cool.
have it available now, dubbed in Portuguese, and then it will be available in Spanish fairly shortly. At least season one will be available,
All right.
and then we'll eventually be doing the same thing with season two. But we really want to help parents and kids understand the principles of freedom and think critically about them, to be able to have conversations so that when they hear things on the news and when they see different things that their governments are doing, local governments, big governments, they can say to themselves, wait a minute, should they be doing that? Is that really what governments are supposed to be doing? Or is that more of the role of the individual? And we very much teach the show about much more the perspective of the rights to life, liberty, and property. That's the government's role as protection of rights. It's not the providing of needs and wants. And that when people have more freedom to make more of their own choices, then the group as a whole will actually be better off than if we're waiting on the government to solve all our problems. And so that's really what we want to teach about and really help people think critically about. And that's it's not political party based. We're not doing it on a Republican versus
Yeah.
Democrat kind of a thing at all. It's all just about teaching the principles and helping them understand them. And we're not throwing out, conservative, liberal, all that kind of stuff. We're not using that kind of language because it's not really important. That's just all the labels, the marketing labels that are used in our discourse today. It's really more about understanding the principles so that kids and adults can see how those are applied in everyday life.
All right. That's so cool. And another question is that you're currently on season 2, but it's not finished, right? So how many post episodes are you going to have, if you can share? And if there's going to be a season 3, and how much episodes has season 1?
So season 1 has 12 episodes. The
All
plan
right.
for season 2 is 11 episodes.
All right.
I'm currently working on the 11th myself right now. I'm directing on that
Oh, that's
episode.
cool.
And so we've released 3 episodes so far. We release a new episode on the first Tuesday of every month. We call it Tuttle Tuesday. So the first Tuesday of
Mm.
every month, we do a live stream. It's on the Angel app and it's on YouTube. And it's available to watch in both of those places. And then all the episodes are available that we've released so far. All 15 of them are available for free on the Angel app, or your audience can also go to TuttleTwins.tv. So
All right.
Tuttle twins.tv. They can go there and find a place to download the app or watch it from there. And yeah, like I said, it's all for free. We want to get this out to as many people as possible. And we have a pay it forward model where you can watch the show for free. And if you want to pay it forward so that other people can watch it as well, you can do that voluntarily, but we don't require that.
That's so cool. All right. So yeah, because I was thinking that yeah, I have seen most of them. I have seen on the in the Angel app, and I didn't know it was on YouTube too. That's so cool. And that you say that you release it on Tuesday, but what did you say before that you make a live stream or something, or how was it?
Yeah, so on the first Tuesday of every month, we
Oh, okay.
release a live stream.
Mm-hmm.
It live streams on YouTube and on the Angel app. But on YouTube, it's only available for a while, and then it's eventually taken down. And then it's available on the Angel app for people to watch, any amount of people to watch for free there. So
And what do you do
that's
on the live?
we just make announcements on the live stream. We stream the episode
Okay.
in its entirety, but we make announcements about different merch
Oh,
that
okay.
we are having different we sell different t-shirts and toys and things like that for kids to be able to buy, and books that go along with each episode, graphic novels. So it's kind of like a comic book with each one. And so we talk about all that on there. Sometimes we have special guests on the show, or different people that are helping us create the show or that are voices on the show. We feature them on there. And so that's a lot of fun too.
All right. You know, between Bitcoiners, we have this phrase that is called, well, we say it a lot, that and it depends the perspective of Bitcoin fixes this. So I want to ask you about that. What do you think that the main problems that Bitcoin, for real, if not can solve it, do you think that it will be like a really good tool to solve some problems? And another question in the same question is, what do you think are the main problems that are happening right now? Well, in all the world we have economic problems, but in the United States, for example, in the United States, currently there's a lot of problems with regulation and banks. We have seen that some banks are already closed, even in Switzerland, for example. It happened the same thing. So, what are your thoughts about that?
I think the main problems that Bitcoin solves is that when you can create money out of thin air, there's just too much temptation for governments to not do that. They're eventually going to do it. And usually they do it for bad things, meaning they're going to go have more wars, and they're going to use it in ways that takes money from everyday people and centers it more in the hands of the very well connected, the rich. And I think Bitcoin solves for that. I think Bitcoin really helps solve the war problem, especially the ongoing wars that the U.S. has been in over the last few decades, of where, you know, being in Afghanistan for forever, and Iraq and those kinds of things. There's no appetite from the public to be going off and bombing these other countries and being involved with our military. And if you can't fund it, then it really restricts it. And that's what I think Bitcoin solves for. So that's number one. I think number two is that it really solves for helping people think long term versus short term. So people will be much more likely to invest in things that bring long-term capital gains. Meaning, if you're wanting to hold on to your money, if you're wanting to spend all your money all the time because your dollar is becoming less and less valuable, then that makes it so you don't make as good of long-term decisions, as opposed to if your money is more stable, then you can invest more in the future because you don't have to worry about it losing its value. And I think that is very helpful for, I mean, things like the arts. It's very helpful for the infrastructure that we build in our communities. And I also think I think Bitcoin really helps solve for the problem of there's been too much in history of people trying to live off of the labor of other people, right?
Yeah.
Before, it happened with slavery, right? Slavery was one of the biggest examples of that. And now that happens more in the transfer of wealth from poor people to very rich people, right? In the way that the money is manipulated. And I think Bitcoin really helps solve for that, so that ultimately, especially in a show that teaches about freedom, one of the biggest freedoms you have is the way that you spend your time, right? Not just the choices you
Absolutely.
make, but the choices you make with your time. And that no one else has No one else has the right to your time but you, right? Your time is your own, and how you decide to use it. It's one of the biggest things in this life of how we choose to use your time. And hopefully, I'm a Christian, so I want to hopefully use my time in a way that is going to benefit those around me, that I'm going to hopefully bless other people's lives. I'm going to serve others, and I'm not just going to do it all for me, but obviously I want to take care of my family, but I want to take care of those in my community and voluntarily use my time that way, but that no one else gets to force my time in that way. And I think that's what Bitcoin helps, is it helps keep people's choices of how they use their time more within their own decision power, because it helps center the money where the real value is coming from, as opposed to people that can kind of be parasites on other people's time. And that's what we don't want, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. All right. I think we're going to start wrap it up. So I'm going to make you to the last two questions. And so one of them, I think it's this is one question that I made to Natalie Brunel, I think, and this is one question that I always wanted to make it again, and I always forget, but now I remember that. So I think it's a deep question because you know, uh, so okay, so is what has Bitcoin contribute in your life the most besides the monetary part?
Yeah. One of the biggest things is that it has really opened up my eyes to the way that technology can be used to incentivize good human behavior.
Mhm.
So on social media, we have a lot of algorithms that actually promote bad behavior, right? It rewards people arguing and insulting and offending, and the comments getting really really bad, or putting up videos that are very controversial, or that are not as just not as good for people. But if I can get a million views, who cares? If I can get the money, who cares, right? There's technology that is rewarding bad behavior right now out there, especially that we see in social media. I'm not saying social media is all bad. I think the democratization of video and stuff with things like YouTube, and of information with Google, and with the transfer of ideas and stuff with things like Facebook and Instagram and all those. I think those are tremendous blessings, but there's also a lot of technology in there built in to reward bad behavior. And I love how Bitcoin has changed my view on how technology can be used to reward good behavior, to reward honesty, to reward um, people being able to uh, hold on to the value that they're creating. That, I think, is amazing, and I think it doesn't just apply to money. I think it applies obviously to a lot of things that we see in in the world around us. I think it's only kind of getting started in the way that technology can really help people bring out their best selves, rather than rewarding sort of their worst selves, like what we see on so much of the internet. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah. Actually, I was thinking that, you know, uh, a couple weeks ago I saw this podcast of Peter McCormack, that is what Bitcoin did, and he was interviewing Jason Lowery, he's the author of Software, and he actually said that he made this campaign on purpose to demonstrate that what you're talking about, the social media rewards bad behavior. So
Yeah.
one of his technique to make marketing, it was like cheap marketing. And sorry, Jason, but it is also Peter's
Yeah.
said. But he said that he blocked how was it? He blocked every person that some friends liked a tweet that Jason blocked another person. So, and then another person liked it, so he blocked it, and then another person comment that, okay, Jason blocked me, so and another person liked it, so he blocked him, and the point was that for him, he wanted to demonstrate that the Twitter algorithm will make more exposure of his profile doing that thing that it actually is a bad behavior, instead of do it on the normal way, that because there's something good, you liked it and that's it. And actually that's what happened. So
yeah.
And
but I think I think
ahead.
that innovation of Bitcoin can be, like I said, extended to other things besides money, where we can find breakthroughs of our behavior that can be rewarded, technologically rewarded, for doing the right thing. And I think that's awesome. That's amazing. I'd love to see more of that.
Absolutely. Yeah. And all right, my last question is, what are you most excited the most about the show, and what can we expect in the near future?
Yeah. So, I mean, right now I'm really excited because I'm working on it, the season finale, but we have an episode coming up on communism,
All right.
that is going to help kids kind of understand communism better, and where the twins will be able to go back and visit Karl Marx,
Wow.
and learn a little bit from him, which is going to be really interesting because we've made him into a really interesting character.
All right.
And I mean, his personal life was not a great life at all. I mean, his ideas were very destructive, but as a person, he was not a great guy. But at any rate, that episode I'm very excited about, just because I don't know that it's ever been shown. We have them going to, on an amusement ride in kind of another dimension where it's a socialist world, where they go and learn about the, kind of at its extreme, socialism can lead to communism, and how damaging that can be. And so, anyway, that I think that episode will open up a lot of people's eyes and have a lot of potential to get a lot of things said about it online that I'm sure a lot of them won't be good. But that's okay. That's the way it is with this show sometimes.
All right. Daniel, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing everything that you're doing, you're working. Personally, I love the show. That's why I brought you to the podcast, because
thank you.
And even the way that you present the show in the animation is really cool. Actually, it remembers, you said Phineas and Ferb. It reminds me of Phineas and Ferb and all the shows that they were really cool. That I love it when I was a teenager.
Awesome. Glad you enjoy it. Thank you.
All right. So thank you again. And guys, see you next week. Ciao.